all pastors have a little crazy in them. I had it. It didn't work as well last time, trust me. You'll see. Anyway, we'll find out.
I'll be wrong.
Anyway, this man and his wife drove 16 hours in a car yesterday with 4 kids. Right? All because he loves us so much he wanted to be back in time. So, okay, if I can get my volunteers to come up, please, young ladies. These, by the way, if you don't know these young ladies, these, you can see right here. These young ladies are phenomenal. You have to meet them. Watch where you walk. Okay, you ready? Okay, I have heard that young people can use money. Is this true? One of us is going to the mall this Friday, right? Okay, so you're going to need some money. How about $20? Oh, then just switch sides. Okay, are you going to the mall? Do you need $20? But you still need $20. You can have Netflix for a month. Would you like it? You already have. Would you like $20? Then take it. There you go. Yeah, that's called open-handed living. Okay, would you like $20? Here you go. She said she wanted to. Ow! Okay, you can have it. Okay. All right, give them a hand. Thank you, ladies, very much. I appreciate it. That, by the way, is Jeff's money, not the church's. Church wouldn't never let me do that with the church's money. They are responsible with their money. Anyway, this is the illustration I wanted to make. The first young lady, I was happy to give her the money. I was living open-handedly, right? That's why I had my hand open. Does that make sense? And then the other young lady, I was close-fisted, close-handed with my money, correct? You see that? And that's our choice in life. We can live open-handed or close-handed. And that's the passage we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at it through that prism of how do we live? Do we live with open-handedness or close-handedness, and what is that like? Okay? And in case it's not clear, I want to make something clear. I'm going to use a few terms maybe for open-handed living. Okay, you might hear me say abundant living or abundance thinking, and being grateful for what we have. Okay, that's open-handed living. Okay, close-handed living, close-fisted living. You might hear me talk about scarcity thinking. Okay, or focusing on what we don't have. All of those mean basically the same thing. Okay, and so with that, we're going to be in Mark chapter 12 today. I'm a special speaker, and so they didn't have the passage. My apologies for that, but it's Mark chapter 12. We're going to start in verse 1. And Jesus is teaching. These are just parables of Jesus that we're going to talk about. And if you know me, I like stories. The Bible is full of stories. By the way, if you want your fancy word of the day, it's pericope. Okay? Pericope. So a individual story that you could take out and kind of read it and it would make sense by itself is called a pericope. Okay? So we'll have 2 stories, 2 pericopes today. We're going to start in Mark 12, verse 1. Here's what it says. It says, "Then Jesus began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it. He dug a pit for the winepress, and he built a watchtower. Then he rented the vineyard to some farmers and moved to another place." You ever heard somebody say to you, the Bible is like, if you were really Christians, you'd all be socialists and communists? You ever heard that? And I'm not, if you know me, I don't take hard stands on these things. However, this part is talking about capitalism. You hear that? This man is creating an infrastructure. Okay? He plants a vineyard. He plants grape trees. Okay? He digs a hole for the wine press. In this time, when you get the grapes, you put them there, and you got to turn them into juice. Okay? That's what the wine press is for. He built a watchtower. Stand someone up there and watch. Okay? He's got the infrastructure to make a profit. Okay? And he wants to make profit, but he's also going to help some other people make a profit. And he rents the field to these people. I mean, you talk about turnkey, right? I mean, this is turnkey before they had the phrase turnkey. You just show up, you run the vineyard, and hopefully you know how to deal with grapes, and off you go. Okay, so that's what this person has done. Okay, verse 2. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants to collect from them some of the fruit of the vineyard. But they seized him, beat him, sent him away empty-handed. Then he sent another servant to them. And then, of course, your page goes away. Okay. Then he sent another servant to them. They struck this man on the head, treated him shamefully. He sent another, and that one they killed. He sent many others. Some of them they beat, others they had killed. He had one left to send, a son whom he loved. By the way, I had COVID. I have COVID brain left. My body's fine. My brain isn't always fine. So just bear with me a little bit today. Okay. Anyway, he had one left, a son whom he loved. He sent him last of all, saying, they will respect my son. But the tenants said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they took him and killed him and threw him out in the vineyard. Whew. These tenants, these renters of the field, were making a profit with no real work. And all they had to do was take a percentage of what they had give it to this man. That was how it worked, okay? Pay rent. We all have to pay rent on our houses or mortgage. If you own a business, you got to pay rent. These people had to pay rent. And they didn't want to, right? Why should I give away? I worked for that. I worked hard. I mean, we all think like this a little bit, right? I worked for that. It's mine. What's so-and-so doing taking my money away from me? It's mine. I worked for it. Closefisted living. So the man wants his rent. He sends people. Eventually he sends his son. There's a parallel with Jesus here that you can't miss. And hopefully you see that. You know, God sends his son and he still was murdered, right? By the way, aren't we lucky for that? That's what they wanted. That's what they needed. Well, that's what they thought they needed. In your life, this is a saying. If you ask somebody, if I ask you, how much money do you need to be truly happy? The most common response you will get is 10% more than I make right now. So if you make $50,000 a year and someone asks you what you need to be really happy, you'll probably say $55,000. If you make 100, you'll probably say 110,000. You get the idea. 10% more than I have. Because we're always looking at what? What we don't have. These guys, they were looking at what they don't have or what they wouldn't have if they gave the money back. And that's where their focus was. Now watch what happens to them. Verse 9. What then will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and kill those tenants and have the vineyard and give the vineyard to others. Haven't you read this passage of Scripture? The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Another reference to Jesus. Then the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders looked for a way to arrest him because they knew he had spoken the parable against them. But they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him and went away. What happens when you have a scarcity mindset? You end up with less. These men who had the vineyard didn't want to give away the rent portion of that profit. And what happens? Ultimately, the guy who owns the land, who's going to have more power than the tenants, comes, kicks them out, puts other people in there who are willing to pay the rent. Oh, and I just untied my shoe. And you don't want me to trip again. Sorry for that. And so, what's he going to do? He's going to take it away. This is what happens when you live thinking about what you don't have. If you think about you don't have enough things. I don't have enough pots and pans. Don't have enough furniture in my house. I don't have a nice enough car, right? If you think like this, and let's be honest, we all think like that, right? I don't have for us, the video game players out there, no, I don't have the right video game system like, oh, AJ's a video game player, okay. Don't you need a better video game system? Obviously, we all do, right? If you live like this, I'm kidding, right? If you live thinking about what you don't have, here's what happens. AJ was telling us this video game is too expensive. What happens when he gets enough money to buy it? He's going to run out, not that AJ would do this, but many of us would run out and just buy it without thinking about the best place to use that money, wouldn't we? What happens when we're thinking about all of those things and we have no money and you live in 2021? You take that credit card. I don't know about you, but they're always sending me, you can have another credit card. They send my daughter, she's 19. You can have a credit card, and I think the balance she can have is like $15,000. It's like 2 years of her salary. But you have it, and you're thinking about what you don't have, and so you go spend. What happens when you use your credit card? Things cost more. In the long run, when you use credit cards, okay, for you young people, if you haven't figured this out yet, when you use credit, in the long run, it costs a lot more, which means ultimately you have less. Doesn't it? Right. If we have some money and we run out and we spend it quickly without thinking, we end up with less important things. We do have the unimportant thing, but maybe we don't have food, or the electricity gets turned off and then we can't play our game anyway. You follow? That's what happens with the scarcity mindset. By the way, if you live with the scarcity mindset, here's what happens. Your IQ, I read this on WebMD, so hopefully it's accurate. Your IQ goes down by 13 to 14 points. If you're a statistician, that's an entire standard deviation. 15 points is a standard deviation. What does that mean? That means if you're really smart, you'll be smart. If you're smart, you'll be average. If you're average, you'll be dumb, okay? That's what it means. If you constantly think about what you don't have, you can no longer think about other things. You focus only on that, and it actually lowers your IQ. It limits your brain function. It reduces your impulse control, right, which is what I was talking about when we run out and buy things. This doesn't just happen with money, but I guess this is a money example. My wife and I, we got married. What happens after you get married? You have children, right? We had dated 3 years, so I mean, it was time. We were going to be, after 3 years, you figure you're pretty safe. So I'm ready for kids, and Kathy's like we had talked about it. Do you want to have kids? Yes. How many do you want? I don't remember what we said, but we wanted, say, 3 or 4 kids, I think. We had both agreed on that. I forgot to ask her when she would want them. So we get married. She goes, I'm not ready. I don't know how to be a mom. I didn't particularly think my mom did a good job, and so I'm not ready. Okay. So we wait 4 or 5 years. Now she's not saying she's not ready anymore. You know what she's saying now? We can't afford kids, right? Newsflash, if you're young, you don't have kids yet. If you wait till you can afford them, you'll be older than me, so you'll never have kids. So you gotta, right? But that's scarcity thinking. I don't have enough money to. Abundance thinking is this. Look at the blessing we would get by bringing this child into our life, right? And by the way, once you have the baby, it takes 9 months for the baby to come, right? So you got 9 months to figure out your budget. And so you do that. And you just, anyway, that's how you handle that. Okay. Another way you can have scarcity mindset is we're talking about like with relationships, right? Nobody loves me. As a pastor, I would hear this, even not as a pastor. My child did not call me for Mother's Day, for Father's Day. My child hasn't called me for 6 months. And I'll always ask, when was the last time you called them? I'm not calling them, right? Because what happens? If I call them, I've talked to them, and I no longer am missing that. I don't have to think about that. It's now it's a good thing. We just want to think about, we want to wallow in our misery. We want to think about what we don't have. And if you're constantly thinking about how nobody loves me, when you do enter a relationship, right, of whatever kind, it becomes clingy. You get very jealous. No, spouse, you can't go talk to that person because you might not love me anymore if you do. You might find out that they're better than me. You follow? We live with this scarcity thinking. Nobody could love me. By the way, that's so not true. God, I want you to think about this. God made you. The Bible talks about how he knew you in your womb. God knows you. God made you. You are precious to him. So, worst case scenario, if you are the person that actually nobody can like, you still have God who loves you, and a love so much greater and better than anything that we can have, so much more abundant. Focus on that. Focus on what you have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the next part of the passage. So let's read that. It's funny how in the first service it takes me 3 times as long to say the same thing as I say now. We might get out early. Don't hold me to that. All right, verse 13. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You are not swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth." They are buttering him up, are they not? You need to, I tried to put it in my voice, but I don't. Anyway, you just need to know that. They're oozing how great Jesus is. You are wonderful. When somebody does that to you, they are setting you up, okay? My wife and I were at Carl's Jr. I used to teach college, a class or 2 at a time. And one of my students was in there and was telling me how great of a teacher I was. And we get done talking to this person. I don't remember who it was, but I do remember it was a girl. We get to the table, and my wife says, "Jeff, you must be a phenomenal teacher." I said, "Honey, I haven't given her her grade yet," right? Once I give her her grade, she may say something entirely different. You never know. And that's kind of the point here. They are setting Jesus up, because look at what happens next. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we? This is a setup. If Jesus says, yes, pay your taxes to Caesar, the people, the crowd, right? Especially the zealots, if you don't know who they were, but nobody likes to pay taxes, and especially nobody likes to pay taxes to somebody who came into your country, invaded it, and took over. And that's exactly the way the Jews saw it. Rome came, they're running things. Jews can't really do what they want all the time, and while it's not terrible, they can't be who they want to be. Like if Mexico or Canada came and invaded America and were able to win somehow, and they started raising our taxes, doubled your taxes tomorrow, would you like that? No. If our people doubled our taxes tomorrow, we wouldn't like that. But if somebody else came, attacked us, and did it, we would really be ticked off. We would be very resentful because, right? And on top of that, Rome didn't just tax them. They took the money back to Rome, enough of it that it was a problem, and to build big statues and stuff, right? You notice the Roman Colosseum still there? You think Rome got all that money to build that just from Rome? No, they went out, conquered people, brought the money back, and built it. That's kind of how it works. So Jesus isn't really going to be able to say yes. So what about no? Okay, don't pay taxes. Well, I mean, Rome's powerful, right? Think about the world we live in. We live in the state that monitors everything you do. You know, the walls have ears. I have an Alexa. Alexa can record everything I say, and I got one in every room of my house. And it wasn't like quite that bad back in ancient times. But Rome still knew what was going on, right? They needed to. They can't have rebels going off trying to take over the country all the time. So if Jesus says, don't pay your taxes, the Roman government, which is extremely powerful, you need to understand, they conquered the entire known world as far as they were concerned, right? They were powerful. If he says, don't pay your taxes to them, that's not going to work, okay? He will be shut down really fast. So he has a no-win situation. But Jesus is Jesus. He is an amazing thinker, philosopher, right? I mean, he's so much more, but he's that. So let's see what he says. But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. Why are you trying to trap me? He said, right? He just calls it out. But then he still comes up with an answer. Bring me a denarius and let me look at it. Bring me a coin. They brought the coin, and he said, whose image is this? And whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied, right? If I had those young ladies bring me back the money, right? We like to focus on the in God we trust part. But it also says something more that in some ways is more, not that it's more important, but it's also important. United States of America, right? Why can we use that money to buy things? Why is it valuable to those young ladies? Because the government says so. The end, okay, right? That's why it's valuable. And so why is this denarius valuable? Well, there's 2 reasons. It's made of something valuable, bronze or copper or silver or gold. I think silver probably, but it's valuable for that reason. But it's also valuable because Caesar said so. That's why his picture's on the coin. Okay, look what he says. Okay, then Jesus said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And they were amazed at him. So, as we all know, the Liberal Party has taken control of our government, and I don't listen to the news a lot, but I did listen for a couple hours this week. One of the things I heard is higher taxes are probably coming. I'm not happy about that. You're probably not happy about that. Even people who voted for them probably aren't all that happy about it. How should we respond? Okay? I'm going to be grumbling in my home to my wife. Why? Because you're taking away what's mine. That's close-fisted thinking, isn't it? We should have open-handed thinking. We are so blessed to live in America. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but we are so blessed to be here. Give to God what is God's. And you can't cover this without briefly talking about tithing, giving money to God. And tithe means, of course, 10%, and that's kind of a mark. But here's what I want you to understand. Like, I got a friend. He gets $850 a month from the government. He's got cerebral palsy. Smart guy, has a bachelor's degree in computers, but he can't work. His body will not let him do the job. So the government gives him money. But that's not a lot of money to live on, right? And so he didn't give money. But then he came. He stays with us now. And my arrangement with him was, instead of paying rent, why don't you help me? I was a pastor. Why don't you help me with church things? And he began to see the value of money to a church. And he began to find value in the church. And he wanted to give to the mission of the church. And so he started giving money. Well, 10% of what he had, I mean, there was no way he could do that. He could barely get by on what he had. So he started giving some. I don't remember what he started with, $25 or $50, but less than the 10%. But for him, that was a great move in the right direction, right? I always say, follow the direction of your life, or if you're mentoring somebody, follow the direction of their life. Don't get caught up on where they are right now. Look at where they were a year ago versus where they are today. Look at where you are a year ago versus today, if you've gone in the right direction or the wrong direction. If you think you've stayed still, you've gone in the wrong direction, just so you know. Okay. So that, though, was honoring God more than he was before. Some of us are giving a little. Maybe we need to give a little bit more, right? Maybe we can. Maybe God will press on us to give a little bit more. 10% is kind of a bar that I like to use. There's some passages in the Bibles that refer to that. But let's be honest. If you're a billionaire and you're only giving 10% of your income, you are living close-fistedly. You could give so much more and improve the world so much better if you would give more than you probably should, right? And so just be aware of that. And as a pastor, I mean, I'm an elder now, but even as an elder, it is our desire for all of us to grow, right? My desire is for each person here to grow. We always want our church to grow, as in more people who come to Christ. But we also, churches will be attractive if each one of us is growing. So we should, on occasion, look at our finances and give. And Kathy and I have been blessed. I was looking today. We are just a little bit above average income. But I live in Joshua Tree. Compared to the people around me, I'm literally wealthy, okay? And I have so much I can do and so much I can give. And so we try to give our 10%, and then we try to do a little bit more when we can. And so all of us are at a different place. And just my encouragement to you is to evaluate this. This isn't anything else we talk about. Evaluate it from time to time. Ask how I can take the next step and how I can grow. We should be giving to God what is God's, right? We should be giving to God our love, our energy. That's the hardest one for me with my background. We should give to God our time. I think for many of us today, that's the hardest one. My wife goes to school half-time, works full-time, and she's salary, so that means 55 hours a week, right? If you're salary, you know. And so she has no time. And it's hard to honor God with her time. I struggle with this. If you're here at church for an hour, 2 hours on Sunday, and that's all the time you give to God during the week, and you're trying to be a mature Christian, that might not be enough. Probably isn't enough. If you're new and you're like, I'm trying to figure out who Jesus is, right? It's where you were versus where you are. If you've never been to church and now you're coming to church once a week, that is great progress. If you've been coming to church like me, I think I started at 4. I went to school on the little bus. We don't have buses anymore, and my parents rode the bus with me to church. That was cute. But I should be giving more than that. I don't always succeed, but where do I give more? Maybe a small group. Small group is a fantastic way. By the way, on Sunday morning, the pastor can come up here and talk, but in small group, depends on the group, but a lot of those small groups, you can go, I'm really struggling with my wife this week. I mean, if she's there with you, you might not want to say that, but you can talk about real life issues. You can struggle with them together. You can offer your advice to their struggles because you did it, I'm 50 now. Well, I had some struggles at 30 that there's some young people in here who actually listen to me from time to time. It's shocking. And I can offer them my experience, and then they can decide to take it or leave it, right? Or in Cody's case, he leaves it for 6 months and then takes it. So, how do we avoid close-fisted living and live with open hand? We think about what we have instead of what we don't have. We are grateful for what we have instead of what we don't have. If you've ever met somebody who's lost a child, there are some tragic stories. But say they have another 2, they can think about the time they have with them. Think about the time they did get to have with the person who died. Eventually, our parents usually pass away. My grandfather passed away, and it was hard because he liked me, and we would spend a lot of time together. He couldn't work. He was disabled. He had polio. So he had a lot of time to give to his grandson. And when he died, I was just devastated. I went on my first date right then, that poor girl, right? It was school dance. I was a wreck. So think about what we have. Be content. I have a fun story. I used to work at a big company. Well, I guess I still work at a big company. But I worked at the second largest computer software firm in the world at the time. And they had a gymnasium downstairs. You could go play basketball. So you go down, you play basketball. They got lockers. And I grew up in Joshua Tree. I trust everybody, and I hate locking things. So I put my stuff in there. Well, somebody comes along, okay, gets in my Okay, this one. Okay, so somebody breaks into the locker, takes my driver's license and my credit card, and I don't notice this for a while until I get my bill. And I had been living on scarcity thinking, and so my credit card was maxed out. In fact, I had like a bunch of maxed out credit cards. This is how I can talk with such authority on scarcity thinking. Anyway, he steals it. He goes to the bowling alley, buys a bowling ball, $200 or $300, goes way over my credit limit. I get fees that, like, why don't you just not charge it? But anyway, there was extra fees for that. And I was not real happy because I was thinking about I don't have anything, and now I have even less, right? Funny part of the story is a couple months go by. My dad calls me up. He goes, hey, Jeff, I got your wallet in the mail. I have my wallet. He goes, well, your driver's license and credit card's in here. So he mails it back to me. There's also a frequent bowling alley card in there. And I work at a big company. I look up in the list of names. We got a list of names for everybody who works there. Oh, the guy's name's on the list, right? My friends are telling me you should get this guy fired, okay? So that's kind of, I guess that's not scarcity thinking, that's revenge thinking, right? But I didn't want to do that. So I called him up and I go, hey, I got your wallet. Obviously I took my parts out of it. And this guy's voice is so scared, right? So scared. And I just gave him back what was his, right? And that was like maybe the first step on my way to being less of a scarcity thinker. I offered forgiveness to this guy who had cost me what I didn't have, right? And so that's just an example from my life. But by the way, I may have done the right thing, but I wasn't thinking the right things, okay? It was the first step on the way. All right, now if you want to have open-handed thinking and you want to think about how blessed you are and how much you have, I want you to understand a few things. 10% of the world lives in extreme poverty, okay? By the way, 25 years ago, when I used to say this, it used to be like 40 or 50%, okay? Extreme poverty is $2 per person per day. So count the people up in your house. Say it's you and a spouse, there's two of you, 30 days times $2 times two people, $120 a month. You got to live on that. And people think, oh, the dollar's valuable, I go to Mexico, my tacos cost less. No, they don't, okay? They cost 10% less, but I mean, they don't cost less. They got to live on $2 per person per day. I mean, that's barely enough to eat. That's why, like my brother-in-law and my sister, they lived in Afghanistan, and I asked him, what does the average person in Afghanistan eat in a day? An egg and a piece of bread, okay? Think about our life. I mean, even versus America, my grandma, I like to tell the story, my grandma talks about when you had meat on Sunday, it was a special day, right? And nobody could afford to have meat every day. Yet, think about how many times a day we have meat today, right? I mean, if you want. And if you're vegetarian or vegan, maybe you don't understand as well, but for the rest of us, 10% of the world lives like that. And it used to be 50, not that long ago. Babies, we live in a place, I mean, think about the last time you heard of a baby or a young person passing away. It happens. But 4% of the children in the world die before they're age 5. 1 in 25. That's down from 10%. Okay, so 25 years ago it was 1 in 10. But think about the last time you heard of a child 5 years old or younger passing away. I can't recall. I have heard it in my life, somebody I know maybe, but not often. Think about how blessed we are. Just think about that. You heard of this phrase? I hadn't heard about it till I read it. Open defecation. This means I don't have a toilet and I don't have an outhouse available. I just gotta poo where I am, which of course is not healthy and it gets into the food supply and things like that. 10% of the world live like that. Compare that to where you are now. We're blessed, aren't we? If we're really, really poor in America, most of us will have at least $500 or $600 a month income, right? We are truly blessed. Paul said, I've learned to be content in all circumstances, right? When I have a lot, when I don't have a lot. Kathy and I have never truly been really poor, but we've had more and had less. And I'll tell you what, our life is the same because I have the same parents, same children, same wife, right? I go to the same church, same friends. The things that really matter don't change. I just can go to Applebee's or Del Taco, depends on where I'm at, right? Because I like to eat out, and I love to eat cheap. That's why I go to Del Taco. My wife likes to eat expensive, so we'll go to Applebee's when we can, right? You follow? My dad, I was also really blessed as a child. One time my dad didn't have a job for 6 months, right? He was construction, and they just didn't have any jobs for 6 months. So he went grocery shopping with my mom. Talk about scarcity thinking. He found fake Cheerios for 10 cents a box. They were called Tostios. Not Tastios, Tostios. These were the worst tasting Cheerios ever. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how terrible it was I had to have Cheerios every morning for 6 months that I did not like. What a brat, right? I mean, I didn't think of it that way then, and I was a pretty good kid, but when I think about the guy who got an egg and a piece of bread for all day, and I'm complaining about the flavor of my Cheerios, that's the wrong kind of thinking. So that's my call to us today. Let's be grateful for the many, many blessings we have. Every one of us in this room can find those things. And let's stop thinking about what we don't have as much as we can. Okay, I'm going to pray, have the worship team come up while I do that. Father, thank you. Thank you for the young ladies who came up and helped me this morning. I really appreciate them. And I pray for them and all the young people in our church, the children, the young adults, those in between. Just pray a blessing on their lives. I pray that all of us will understand how lucky we are. It's so easy to know what we don't have. We spend so much time trying to make sure that we can get what we think we need. But we are so blessed. Help us to remember how blessed we are. Help us to be thankful to you every day of our lives. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So if you're new, while the songs are going on,